Hey, what's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Preseason 8 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today I will be covering top lane Gangplank, the Saltwater Scourge.
They can pay in gold or blood.
Alright, so let's hop right into this guide by looking at his pros and his cons. So first, right off the top, Gangplank's a champion with some really high burst damage that can even shred through tanks because he does have armor penetration on his barrels. He's also a champion with a really strong late game that's also really easy to farm on because of the AoE damage from his barrels. He's also able to cleanse crowd control with his W ability, which gives him some pretty decent survivability if he does get caught in a crowd control. Then finally, Gangplank gets a pretty solid early power spike whenever he does acquire his Sheen. This will make last hitting incredibly easy, and your parlay is going to hit the enemy champion rather hard as well. Now for his cons, however, he does have a pretty weak early lane phase. He can get bullied by a lot of the top laners out there, but when he does start acquiring his items, he can do a lot of damage. He's also one of those top laners that's fairly squishy. You'll usually want to go for a Trinity Force into an Infinity Edge and a bunch of other crit as well, and of course, as you note, there's no tankiness. Gangplank's also a champion that doesn't have any hard crowd controls. He does have multiple slow abilities, but he doesn't have anything like a stun. And finally, he also has some really high cooldowns as well. Sure, his Q ability is somewhat spammable, but his barrels and his ultimate definitely are not. For your runes, you want to go for Inspiration and Sorcery, grabbing Kleptomancy as your keystone. This is really strong on Gangplank because your parlay ability does apply on-hit effects, which of course will proc Kleptomancy. This will give you a nice extra chunk of gold and can also give you elixirs. Next up, I like to take Perfect Timing because you will get granted a free stopwatch, which does have the ability to save you if you get caught out in a bad position. Then, just so I can rush things like a Sheen or a Trinity Force just a little bit quicker, I like to pick up Futures Market. Then finish off Inspiration by getting Cosmic Insight just for that little bit of extra CDR. Then in the sorcery side, you want to go for Ultimate Hat so you can use your ultimate just a little bit more often, and then go for Scorch so your harassment burns the enemy champion and is a little bit more effective. For your first summoner spell, you want to pick up Flash. You're a fairly squishy champion, so you can use it throughout the game to escape if you do get caught in a bad position. You can also use it offensively to engage onto or finish off a low health enemy if the opportunity does present itself. For your next summoner spell, you want to take either Teleport or Exhaust. Teleport is great in the top lane since you'll be able to split push for a large portion of the game and put pressure on the enemy team. It's also great to return to lane if you do get shoved out by the enemy top laner. Now Exhaust is also a great option if you are in a hard matchup. Use it on the enemy when you're going in for a long fight to reduce their damage so you can usually come out on top. Your passive is Trial by Fire, which gives you some nice true damage and also gives you bonus movement speed. Gangplank's next basic attack burns the target, dealing between 55 and 225 based stun level plus 100% bonus AD bonus true damage over 2.5 seconds, and grants Gangplank 30% bonus movement speed for 2 seconds. Turrets receive 50% reduced damage. Trial by Fire cannot be applied with Parlay or Powder Keg, but destroying a Powder Keg instantly readies Trial by Fire and grants its bonus movement speed. So this is a pretty nice passive because it does give Gangplank a source of true damage, which is on a static cooldown of 15 seconds. Gangplank is definitely not the most mobile champion in League of Legends, and this does give you 30% bonus movement speed, which is pretty nice on a melee champion. Keep in mind that you can simply destroy a Powder Keg for this movement speed as well. You don't actually have to auto attack somebody. Your Q ability is Parlay, which is your bread and butter ability that does some nice damage from range, gives you bonus gold, and gives you Silver Serpents. When activated, Gangplank shoots the target enemy with his pistol, dealing physical damage and applying on-hit effects. Parlay can also critically strike. If Parlay kills its target, Gangplank plunders gold and Silver Serpents, the latter of which can be spent to upgrade Cannon Barrage. So this is a really strong ability because it does have a 100% AD ratio, it can critically strike, and it also applies on-hit effects. That means that this ability works great with a Sheen because it does apply on-hit effects, and of course also Kleptomancy because it will give you that extra gold and can also give you elixirs. You will want to try to finish off minions with this ability as much as possible for that plundered gold and Silver Serpents, but it's also great to harass the enemy champion at the same time in between last hits. Keep in mind that you can also finish off one of your barrels, which is your E ability, with this ability as well, and it will plunder all of the gold for any minions killed by that barrel. Your W ability is Remove Scurvy, which removes a crowd control from Gangplank and also makes him heal himself. When activated, Gangplank consumes a large quantity of citrus fruit, removing all crowd controls affecting him and making him heal himself. So this yet again is a really nice ability, but keep in mind it does have a rather long cooldown, so using it properly is very important. You can use this throughout the lane phase just to give yourself a little bit of extra sustain, but if you think somebody might be coming in for a gank, or if the enemy you're against does have a crowd control, then you usually want to hold on to it. It does have a 15% missing health ratio on it, so although it's also AP based, if you are on low health, it will give you a really nice chunk of health. The better part of the ability, however, is the fact that it does remove a crowd control, so make sure you use it for that, not just to heal. Your E ability is Powder Keg, which gives you some really nice AoE damage, which is great for both farming and harassing the enemy champion. Passively, Gangplank stores a charge of Powder Keg periodically up to a maximum of 3 stored at once. When activated, Gangplank places a Powder Keg at the target location for 60 seconds. So this is another really strong ability because it does do some really solid AoE damage and can actually have a pretty decent range as well. You do have to keep in mind, however, that it does have a really long recharge time, so if you're doing the 3-barrel combo, you have to wait a very long time until you can do it again. To do this combo, however, you first want to drop 2 barrels and then shoot the first barrel and drop your third one before the second barrel in the chain explodes. This will do damage in 3 different areas and it can chain pretty far away from you and it will hit people really hard. Keep in mind as well that if you do destroy a Powder Keg, you will also get that chunk of movement speed that does come from your passive. The barrel also slows all enemies hit and ignores 40% of the enemy's armor. Your ultimate is Cannon Barrage, which is a global ultimate that does some nice AoE damage and slows all enemies within. When activated, Gangplank singles his ship offshore to fire upon the target area for 8 seconds, calling down 12 waves of cannonballs in clusters of 3 every 2 seconds and reveals the area. Each wave deals magic damage to all enemies hit and slows them by 30% for 0.5 seconds. Gangplank can purchase upgrades for his ship in the store at the cost of 500 silver serpents each, which improves Cannon Barrage. Now, as for these upgrades, the best one by far is Death's Daughter, which makes an initial cannonball land in the center of the barrage, dealing a cluster's worth of true damage to all enemies it hits and slowing them by 60% for 1.5 seconds. The second best one here would be Fire at Will, which makes Cannon Barrage fire 6 additional waves over its duration. You'd then finally want to pick up Raise Morale, which makes the barrage grant allies 30% bonus movement speed while they are inside the area, persisting for 2 seconds after leaving it. So all in all, this is a pretty strong ultimate because you can use it globally and help your teammates that are fighting in different areas of the map. It will do a pretty significant amount of damage if people do stay inside of it, and of course slow them so your teammates are able to kite and get on people easier. Make sure you watch your minimap so you can use this effectively at all times. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then, since it is your bread and butter ability, make sure you max your Q ability first because it gives you additional gold whenever you kill minions and does a big chunk of damage. You'll then want to move on to your E ability because it does have a really nice source of AoE damage and the recharge time goes down every time you put points in the ability. That of course means you want to save your W ability for last, but make sure you take an early point in it at level 3 so you can actually give yourself some extra sustain and break crowd controls. Now, Gangplank's lane phase is only decent, but in certain matchups it can actually be pretty strong. You want to focus on last hitting minions as much as possible with your parlay so you can get a bunch of silver serpents that can upgrade your Cannon Barrage as soon as possible. Keep in mind that any minions you kill with a barrel that you did destroy with your parlay will give you the bonus gold and silver serpents. Now, in between those last hits, you'll want to try and poke the enemy as much as you can with your parlay. This will proc your Kleptomancy Keystone and give you some really nice extra gold and elixirs. Gangplank's a pretty decent team fighter, but keep in mind you're a fairly squishy champion. You should try to stay on the backline with the rest of your team and use your Cannon Barrage and Powder Keg to safely do damage to the enemy backline. As long as your barrels hit the enemies, they will be slowed and kiting shouldn't be too much of an issue. You'll then want to hold on to your Remove Scurvy until you're hit by a crowd control. A well-timed orange can give you a ton of extra survivability. Whenever your barrels are in cooldown, you should just be poking with your parlay until they come off cooldown again, in which case you should start using them again. Now let's look at a few of your hard matchups, and first up is Kale. Kale's going to be really annoying for you because she does a lot of damage with her Righteous Fury activated, and she can of course slow you with her Q. As you poke Kale over and over again with your parlay ability, she's just going to sustain herself with her W. Try to farm as much as possible and influence the map with your ultimate. You are both really strong late game champions, so if you both get a lot of farm, you should kind of cancel each other out. Another hard matchup for you is Swain. Swain is a champion that has a lot of harassment, so you have to try to stay out of the range of his crows so you don't get destroyed. Since you are somewhat a melee champion, this can be kind of annoying to deal with. Once Swain gets his level 6, his ultimate gives him a ton of sustain, and any poke you do with your Q ability will be completely negated. Focus on farming as much as you can because you are a late game beast, and influence the map with your ultimate. Alright, now let's finish off this guide with your item build, which starts with either a Sapphire Crystal refillable potion and a warding totem, or a corrupting potion and a warding totem. I'll usually go for the Sapphire Crystal as much as I can so I can rush a Sheen, but if you feel like you really need the extra sustain, then make sure you go for the Corrupting Potion instead. For your core build, we have a Churning Force, Yumu's Ghost Blade, and an Infinity Edge. This will give you an absolute ton of burst damage, some nice increased crit damage, and some lethality as well. You will also have 30% CDR as well, so you can spam your parlay over and over again, and your E ability is going to come off cooldown rather often as well. For your boot options, we have Ninja Tabbies against high AD teams, Merctres against high AP and CC heavy teams, and Ionian Boots for 10% CDR if you do need it to finish off your cap. Now for the item build, we first have a Sterak's Gauge. Since Gangplank is a relatively squishy champion, this will give you at least some tankiness and also increase your damage at the same time. If we're then looking for some attack speed and critical strike chance, we can get either a Shiv or a Phantom Dancer. Both give you 30% crit chance and a bunch of attack speed, so if you're really looking to make those parlays hit as hard as possible, you'll want to pick up these items. If you instead want to go bursty as possible, you can always pick up the Duskblade. This will make your first Q ability hit incredibly hard, and you can even one-shot some squishy champions. If you're then looking for something that also has a built-in defensive, you can always go for the Guardian Angel. This will give you some really nice attack damage, but also allow you to come back to life in the later stages of the game. If you then needed some armor penetration, you can get either the LDR or the Mortal Reminder. If I need to pick one up, I'll usually go for the LDR, but if you really need the Grievous Wounds, then make sure you pick up that Mortal Reminder. These items I don't take too often on Gangplank, however, because your E ability does negate 40% armor already, but if the enemy team is incredibly tanky, then you may want these items. For my example full build, however, I take that core build, get some Ninja Tabbies, and then a Static Shiv and a Phantom Dancer. This is going to give you 80% crit chance with some increased critical damage, and of course it has the Churning Force as well for that Sheen component. You'll do an absolute insane amount of damage with this item build, but keep in mind you are very squishy, so positioning is very important. But that covers everything I've got for Gangplank in Preseason 8. If you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure you drop a like and subscribe, because I do make videos pretty regularly. Also, make sure you check out the video description below for a link to all of my social medias, and I do also have a Discord server, so make sure you hop in and say hello. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video, I really do appreciate it. So on that note, take it easy, have a good day, and peace.